And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE. And now, SiliconANGLE TV and Wikibon.org present VMworld 2011. Live from Las Vegas, it's theCUBE.
Yeah, I'm John Furrier of SiliconANGLE.com, and I'm here with...
I'm Dave Vellante of Wikibon.org, and we're here live at VMworld 2011, and we're here with Jerry Chen, who's the VP of Application Services and Cloud Services at VMware. Jerry, thanks for coming on theCUBE.
Thanks for having me.
So Cloud Foundry announcement was really big. I mean, it was taken by storm by the community. It was actively the most conversed thing that we're tracking on SiliconANGLE.com, and it's been that way for a few weeks. Obviously, platform as a service is hot. So tell us, what's the big change in the platform as a service, and then we'll jump into Cloud Foundry, just macro in the marketplace.
You know, I think what Cloud Foundry really hit a nerve with developers and our customers out there, because it really channeled a need we saw in the market. When VMware took a look around in the past market 2 years ago, we saw a bunch of new offerings, a bunch of startups and a couple larger companies, but most of the past offerings were either a single language, like only Ruby or only Java or only Python. They had limited technologies you can use, or were stuck on one cloud. You're like, you're only on Amazon, you're only on Google, you're only on Microsoft's cloud. And we really saw a need for, you know, some people call it like a next generation PaaS or a modern PaaS. We call it open PaaS or open platform as service. We wanted a platform that could be multiple languages, because no one's just developing in Java or PHP or Python. They're using multiple languages, multiple frameworks. Number two, we wanted you to plug in your database, your data services, whatever you wanted. And most importantly, we wanted you to run this PaaS engine in the private cloud or public cloud. So it's your cloud, it's your PaaS, it's your app. You should run it in the public cloud if you want, or run it in your own data center. Or last week, we released a microcloud, run on your laptop.
So on Cloud Foundry, what's the biggest thing that you've heard from the community about it? I mean, was it people grumbling or like, well, VMware, what's their plans? I mean, what is the biggest thing that you took away from that announcement?
I think the biggest thing we took away from it was this need for symmetry between private and public clouds. So a lot of people love the power of like Amazon or Heroku or Google App Engine, but they want to replicate the same development environment in multiple locations. So at VMware, we've been talking about this hybrid cloud strategy for a few years now. Applying that same philosophy at the app layer was, I think, revolutionary. Just thinking like you can have the same app platform for your cloud apps in multiple locations.
So how fast do you expect these to be adopted? I mean, like you mentioned, there's a bevy out there. Developers and users have to make bets. So what's your scenario for how fast this gets adopted, this vision?
I think the vision is that you guys have been tracking this for the past 4 months since we announced it. And the vision, I think, is being adopted. And just think about the past 4 months. Everyone's talking about OpenPaaS, right? EngineYard bought Orchestra.io for PHP. Other players are adding other languages and frameworks. So we've really changed the name of the game that other players are now doing what Cloud Foundry is doing. I think the next thing you're going to see is other players talk about multi-cloud, right? Last week, AppFog, which is formerly PHP Fog, announced they're adopting Cloud Foundry as an underlying platform for their own offering. And ActiveState, another company, is adopting Cloud Foundry as a platform for their offering. So I can see Cloud Foundry getting adopted by other PaaS providers, other ISVs. Now, the point you made is developers need to make a bet, and we understand that, and which is why we A, open source Cloud Foundry, so you're not locked in, and B, we don't want you to make a bet. If you're a Java guy, use Java. If you're a Ruby guy, use Ruby. You know, if you're a PHP guy, use PHP. We're not going to change the way you develop for our cloud. We're going to build Cloud Foundry to make you productive.
What about developers? You mentioned that. So let's talk about that. So Rackspace has got a lot of traction with OpenStack.
Sure.
A lot of people are jumping in. It's got a lot of momentum. But the question is, how fast are these things rolling out? And what's the message to developers when they evaluate Cloud Foundry versus other offerings? What do you say to them, those developers?
You know, Rackspace and OpenStack is a different type of beast, right? It's an open source project really focused on storage, networking, compute. That's more analogous to their version of EC2, and you guys can talk to those OpenStack guys about what's adoption there. There's been a lot, I think, interest around it, but I haven't seen a lot of our customers talk about deploying that production yet. What I think OpenStack...
That's polite for saying that no one's adopting it. Okay.
Well, I think that's consistent with our scenario.
It's early days across the board.
It feels good. Everyone's jumping in the pool, but nothing's happening.
Well, there's stuff happening, but there's not. I mean, as far as commercial deployments, there's a lot of risk there. It's open source, but anyway, sorry.
No. There's a lot of risks because it's new and early, and at that layer, that infrastructure to service layer, like Paul Moritz always says, it's got to be rock solid. It's just got to work. And I think we've seen our customers migrate to vSphere and that virtualization platform because it's a known factor. We've got a lot of history. We've got a lot of VMs running on it. That hardware level is going to work. The innovation that we've seen in my business unit is around how do we create that same kind of elasticity that we built with virtualization at the next layer, the database layer, the app server layer, the messaging layer. And in Cloud Foundry is all about saying, okay, I've got this nice elastic infrastructure that is vSphere. How do I give elasticity to my applications?
One of the things that was talked about yesterday in the keynote is multi-cloud performance. So talk about how Cloud Foundry fits into that, because there's a lot of coordination involved, obviously policy and a lot of stuff at the bottom of the stack, and also software involved.
Sure. Multi-cloud's a tricky answer because it depends on in your application. Well, let's think about these next generation web apps you're going to build, right? The next generation apps are going to be to your browser, maybe to your iPhone or iPad, right? Inherently mobile. They're using tons of more data, right? So you want to scale your application dynamically from one cloud to another cloud. So one, you want to scale elastically, and we've got products within Cloud Foundry and within our kind of VMware family, like Gemfire, that lets you scale your data. It's like an in-memory database. And then Cloud Foundry, if you look underneath the hoods, it scales linearly. You just add more instances of our runtimes, and you just scale up your application. So we can kind of go big or go small. And then in terms of multi-cloud, it's real easy. Because if you're running Cloud Foundry on your laptop or in your private cloud, you're running Cloud Foundry in your public cloud, it's really easy for you as a developer to just push your app to one cloud and then redeploy that same app to another cloud. So we really give you this multi-cloud portability.
What are the biggest goals that you have this year for Cloud Foundry? Obviously, a lot of splash out there,
Sure.
So big splash in the pool. But on a tactical basis, what are you guys looking to do? What's your key goals?
Yes, I think our goals are two things. One, developer awareness and adoption. Number two, ecosystem. So on cloudfoundry.com and cloudfoundry.org, the open source project, we aggressively track and monitor the number of open source check-ins and improvements. We've had, I think, over 100 open source contributions to the project. People added Erlang as a language, they've added JRuby, guys have been adding PHP, Python, so we track that as the health of open source. Number 2 goal for the year was ecosystem. Getting Cloud Foundry as a platform for developers and ISVs. And last week with AppVog and ActiveState adopting Cloud Foundry, plus the week before that with Canonical, Opscode, Dell, and Stratus and RightSkull all using Cloud Foundry as a PaaS container as well, we feel pretty good that we're on a good trajectory to get adopted.
What do you think about the demand? The demand in the marketplace from customers. So it really seems to be really high, right? So what's the speed of change that you're seeing in our development around the PaaS market and Cloud Foundry? What's the pace like?
Pace is always interesting to kind of judge. From our perspective, because we're starting from 0 4 months ago, it's been a solid ramp. I think on cloudfoundry.com, just to give you an indication, we've been doubling the users every 2 months and tripling the applications every 2 months, which means that apps are growing faster than users, meaning developers like it, they come back and deploying more apps. So we continue on that growth pace. I think a year from now, you and I can have this conversation and we'll be really surprised, really happy about the number of apps being powered by Cloud Foundry, but only time will tell.
Well, I have one more question is that CSC was on yesterday talking about cloud, their customer base, and she said, Siki Gunta said, people are talking about the future too much and not about today. And the CEO of Puppet Labs said they focus on problems that are in the market today. What are the biggest problems that are opportunities that are in the market today?
The biggest problems or opportunity in the market today?
Yeah, I mean, fix the market today. So what the message was is that you can talk about the future, but there's stuff in the market that needs to get done today in customer environments, problems that need to get solved. What are they?
I think for us, what we're seeing at VMware and the Cloud Foundry team is speed and agility for this next generation applications. You're going to have your existing apps or legacy apps. You can manage those, make them better by running them on vSphere, wrapping them in a VM, security, availability. Now, every CIO out there is saying, I got a next generation apps to build. For my iPad, iPhone, I got to throw a mobile client on a legacy app, right? How do I get my CRM application or my ERP app to an iPad? How can I do that quickly and as fast as possible without any disruption? So I think the biggest problem for us is customers are saving a ton of money virtualizing their infrastructure at that low level. They now need to spend that money to build new apps to actually add value to the business. So at the end of the day, an application supports a business need or a business process. And if they can spend more money to develop apps faster, they can be more competitive in the marketplace.
How early is the PaaS market right now? Is it still in the bottom of the first inning, second inning? And talk about that and standards. Where are we in the industry in this particular area?
Yeah, I think we're early. And when you think about the PaaS marketplace and standards, we're early, I think 2-3 years into the market. VMware started this project 2 years ago. Just launched a project 4 months ago, so I think we're very early. In terms of standards, there's 2 areas to look at. Number 1 is we support open frameworks and open languages. Ruby on Rails, Java for Spring. So those are well-established standards, well-established open source communities. We're just embracing them. Above and beyond that, standards around deploying to different clouds like Amazon or VMware, I think that's evolving. VMware definitely works aggressively with the DMTF or on standards bodies around what a VM is or what a container is. What we've seen at our team is working with these open source projects like Puppet Labs, you mentioned, or Opscode.
We heard from the venture capitalist Ping Li from XL Partners and Insuk Ray, co-founder of LoudCloud, and I asked them what the biggest challenges were, and they said finding talent. So as you attract people to your project, what are you seeing in terms of talent acquisition, engineers, et cetera? What are the key skills, and is it tough to find good people?
I think it's always tough to find good people. It's a productive engineer is a great engineer is 10 times productive as a socio engineer. So I think Ping and our team at VMware, we're always looking for top engineering talent. At VMware, we're really lucky that we have a great team. the engineering team that built the vSphere platform, the team that built the Cloud Foundry platform is probably top 5%, top 2% of the engineers I work with.
What's the biggest change you've seen in, say, the last 5 years in the developer mentality, and project forward as to what you see with things like Cloud Foundry?
Yeah.
How is that going to change the development environment in going forward?
I think the past 5 years, you've seen developers really take control of their environment and tools. 10 years ago, or maybe 15, IT was really centralized, right? The CIO said, we're a Java shop, we're a .NET shop, we're an Oracle shop. The past 5 years, we've seen developers say, you know what, I'm going to pick the tools to make me productive. I'm going to use Tomcat, I'm going to use Ruby, I'm going to use PHP. All these kind of NoSQL technologies like MongoDB or Cassandra or HBase, they're saying, hey, I'm going to use these new technologies to be super productive. And I think the past 5 years, we've seen that shift of power between centralized IT move to the developers, so the developers can pick the languages and technologies to make them super productive. I think if you project that forward, that's only going to continue. The cloud services like VMware and Cloud Foundry are just going to make it easier and easier for developers to grab the technologies they want to write their apps faster. So I see the next generation of app platforms all about making developers productive and making them as efficient as possible.
And an app explosion.
An app explosion. It's true, a bunch of mini apps. Look at the Apple App Store. There's thousands of small apps. And I think you're going to see a world where you have your legacy apps, and then for everything else, there's an app for that.
What is the biggest thing you've learned over this project, the past 2 years and 4 months, that you could share with folks out there?
I think the learning has come largely in two perspectives. One is working with this next generation of developer communities, right? What they care about. They very much care about working in the open source community, using new technology frameworks, and they're very, very lightweight. I mean, if there's a language or framework that doesn't meet their needs, they'll create their own framework, right? And they'll create their own tool. So working with a really dynamic developer population, number one. And number two, it's trying to marry that speed with a system that scales. I mean, developers are thinking about building their individual apps. What we're trying to do is give them that productivity